Thank you so much for joining us. I am Melissa Hovey, Executive Director for Share Charlotte, and I want to say a big hearty welcome to those of us in person or virtual today. We are so grateful for you joining. This session marks our last session for the series. But stay tuned for a really fun event. And Ish, can we go to the next slide? Oh, thanks. As I reflect on 2025, my letter for this year is the letter C, which stands for change, challenge, collaboration, and community. These last 6 sessions have been an amazing collaborative effort, not only by Foundation for the Carolinas, the Lee Institute, United Way, and Share Charlotte, but from all of you who have attended and informed our work together. When we started back in May, as you can see our 6 sessions and all the people that registered and all of our topics, it wasn't because we had the answers, but because we knew we couldn't find them unless we came together and leaned into the uncomfortable. The work we're doing here today together since May is unlike anything that's happening in other communities, which isn't surprising because Charlotte is special. I know my colleagues all feel incredible gratitude for all of you, for all that you fight for every day, for what you are trying to navigate through right now, and the bravery in which you are doing it. Keep fighting the good fight and help give us the feedback to inform our work together. And now I'm excited to welcome my friend and co-collaborator, Peter Blair.
Thank you. Indeed, it has been a year. I was just commenting to a colleague as we were getting started today that the pace is what is challenging to me right now, right? It started many, many months ago, and here we are sitting almost at Halloween, and the pace just doesn't seem to be letting up. So I'm trying to lean into that and find that rhythm in whatever pace is there. One of the things that has been foremost in our minds as we navigate this shifting landscape of nonprofit funding is not only are many nonprofits facing a significant reduction in federal support, with many grant programs and direct funding streams eliminated or dramatically cut in the year 2025, it's raised also the urgency to explore alternative revenue models. Sometimes those pushes are coming from internal in the organization. Either it's a board member who believes that they have the next right fit for us, or it's an outside organization, or it's a funder or a collaborative effort that says, hey, I think you should start thinking about this. What other alternative revenue models exist? And private philanthropy and foundation funding are vital, and they remain vital, but they're increasingly competitive and often project restricted, which limits your organization's flexibility. And so earned revenue, which for those of you who don't operate in the types of terminology, but let's just define it today, right? Income from sales of services or products. Maybe you offer memberships or ticketed events or social enterprises. This idea of earned revenue in the nonprofit space is receiving increased attention. As I mentioned, nonprofit boards and funders and others who have really positive intentions are suggesting to us as nonprofit leaders that we explore these opportunities. And unlike the traditional contributed revenue sources that we have, earned revenue can support unrestricted funding. It can direct program enrichment. It has an opportunity for long-term investment in our organizational capacity. It's got lots of positive or potential positive outcomes. There are challenges, though, in launching or scaling these earned revenue income streams if you don't have them. Many organizations could confront cultural or operational shifts in order to embrace this type of thinking. Particularly those who are rooted in grant-dependent or donor-driven funding models may face the most challenge. Barriers could include staff capacity. Do you have the ability to analyze the market? Are there legal compliance issues or risk tolerance, right? And you're often working with limited expertise or resources to start a fee for service or retail or social enterprise opportunity. So boards and leadership have to really align around why. Why would we endeavor to have an earned income initiative? And also recognizing that that initial investment is going to be required before anything can occur. So this is not a just, if you build it, they will come and all of a sudden your revenue is there. It often requires investment of time, of resources, and of people. Successful earned revenue initiatives often start with a real close assessment of your organizational assets, your mission alignment, and market gaps. Considering what are we really good and uniquely positioned to do, and then really strong business analysis and financial tracking are going to be essential to ensure that the venture doesn't distract from the core mission, and rather it adds to the mission and your stability. So as the funding environment continues to evolve, earned revenue appropriately may become a more permanent and necessary component of a thriving nonprofit business model in the US. So we asked you what you were interested in thinking about in this series. You answered and we listened. That's the way that great collaborative efforts work, right? Earned revenue was the most requested topic for our continued conversation, and today we've gathered a panel of respected community leaders, and we're going to sit and have a discussion about the topic, and then we're going to ask you to have a discussion about the topic. So if you're sitting at a table right now that has, let's say, less than 5 people, think about moving as our folks move around to a table that has more than 5 people. It'll make your conversation in a minute here a little more robust. And while we do that, I'm going to ask our panelists to come and join us. Many of you know Trina Fuller. Trina serves as president and CEO of the Charlotte Rescue Mission. She leads one of Charlotte's most impactful organizations, serving individuals at the intersection of homelessness and addiction. Charlotte Rescue Mission operates Community Matters Cafe, a nonprofit restaurant and social enterprise located in Charlotte, North Carolina, serving breakfast, lunch, and coffee in a welcoming warehouse-style setting. More than just a place to dine, the cafe operates as a transformative life skills program for graduates of the Charlotte Rescue Mission's 180-day residential addiction recovery program. Students work through various restaurant positions, supported by staff and mentors, to gain critical real-world work experience, restore self-confidence, and facilitate their reintegration into daily life and the broader community. Thank you for joining us, Trina. Bruce Clark is the executive director of the Center for Digital Equity at Queen's University of Charlotte, where he leads efforts to close the digital divide and ensure that every resident, especially those in low-income or historically marginalized communities, has equitable access to technology, internet connectivity, and digital skills training. He has driven the creation and implementation of Charlotte's digital inclusion strategy, including leading the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Digital Inclusion Steering Committee in producing a countywide digital equity playbook and helping to reduce the region's digital divide through strategic partnerships with local government, education, business, and nonprofit entities. His background spans public, private, and nonprofit roles, including executive roles at Common Thread Strategies and campaign management in major political campaigns, bringing a blend of strategic, operational, and communications expertise to his work. Thank you for joining us, Bruce. Sechelle McNeil, where are you, Sechelle? Is the founder and CEO of Washroom Laundry Service, a Charlotte-based company known for its residential and commercial laundry pickup, delivery, and dry cleaning services. Sechelle launched the business in 2016. Her journey into entrepreneurship was shaped by personal adversity and resilience. Facing barriers to employment, she leveraged her experience with laundry to fill a market gap in laundry delivery services. Within months of founding the business, she grew Washroom Laundry into a thriving operation, even pivoting and expanding her services during the COVID-19 pandemic to serve both households and commercial clients in Charlotte. She's recognized for combining efficiency, sustainability, and community building in her approach, and actively supports charitable causes while empowering both her families, several of whom work in the business, and employees seeking a fresh start. Thank you, Sechelle. I'm going to date myself a little here, but I feel like Phil Donahue for a minute. It's like really, really weird. All right. Let's talk about ideation. Okay. You get this, you're sitting in the boardroom or you're sitting with staff and you've got this idea and you know, you think maybe this thing's going to work. Trina, Community Matters Cafe has really become the gathering place for leaders in our community. I mean, I joke that I need to plan 20 minutes before my reservation or before I'm going to sit down to even walk through the room because of all the folks that are there. So it really has become the gathering place. However, long before it was the community anchor it is today, the building that now houses Community Matters Cafe had its own story. Can you tell us that story and how it relates to how you first considered pursuing an earned revenue stream?
Thanks for having me. I've been the president and CEO for about a year and 5 months. And so this question had me go back and dig into the history of that building. Before it was the cafe, it actually was a storage facility. Before that, it was an admissions program. And even before that, it was a thrift store. And so back in the late 90s, the first effort at a social enterprise was the thrift stores that the mission had. And quite honestly, that wasn't a successful effort. We moved it to Albemarle Road, where it lost attraction even more. And so it sat from about 2005 or 6 until about 2012. And it was just a dump. Whatever people didn't want, they said, oh, put it in a storage building. And so the ideation around how do we take this building really rested in the vision of our former president, Tony Marciano, who resisted the board's desire to knock the building down. And so year after year, Tony kept saying, there's purpose for this building. And so a volunteer came to the mission, volunteered in the kitchens, got with Tony, had an idea about, you know, Johnson & Wales is right down the street. There are other missions that are doing restaurant, not as a business, but as a program. And so they visited Homeboy Industries out in Los Angeles and other missions, talked to other leaders. And that's how the idea of creating a restaurant and a coffee shop was born. However, creating the program that it feeds and that it supports really was a collaborative effort.
Thank you. Bruce, you told me a similar story about the origin of earned revenue at the Center for Digital Equity. I believe you said it was born out of a conversation with someone who really wanted your services, but you didn't have the capacity to meet them. Is that the right way that it started?
Yeah, it was a conversation where, you know, we're typically thinking about who cares about our work, not necessarily who has the money to pay for our services, right? And so when we think about who cares about our work, it put us in the sort of grant cycle, find somebody who cares about the work. And then one day, someone who cares about the work, who also had non-grant sort of just regular operating dollars said, hey, well, can I just pay you to run that program? Not as a grant cycle, but just as a service contract. And I thought, that's the most obvious thing that I haven't thought about yet. And we're housed at Queen's University, and so we're not going to talk about the merger today. But I went back to my boss, the chief academic officer, and I said, "Can we do this? I mean, I know we sell, we don't sell degrees, but we sell access to education." And so she said, "Absolutely, and here's how you do it." And so it was Anna London at Charlotte Works, and the first investment was actually at the Rescue Mission, and so. They funded that program through a service contract that has really was the start of our entire service revenue business.
And just curious, the scope of that business now relative to what you do in total?
So this year we're about 4 million, and about 40% of that will be service revenue.
So Shell, washroomlaundry.com was born from a place of necessity, right? I believe that you were in a similar situation to many nonprofit organizations today. You were facing some adversity and you had to be resilient. Can you tell us about how you took that from need to reality? How'd you ideate? How'd you get out of that space of, I really need this? How do you make it happen?
Wow, good. Good question. Thanks everyone for having me here on this panel. As they were talking, I was thinking that, wow, these are organizations who have a pretty large support system. And I think about nonprofits, and a lot of times nonprofits don't have that big support system. They don't have people with deep pockets to support them. And so you have to be a little bit scrappy, right? And that is kind of how I started the washroom laundry service. It was out of necessity. I did not have a job. I was a returning citizen. I had just been released from federal prison to Charlotte, and I didn't have a job. My background is manufacturing, over 13 years of strong manufacturing success, right? And operational efficiency, all of the good things, all of the buzzwords. And I couldn't find a job. And I was talking to a friend, and I was telling my friend, hey, when I was in prison, my prison hustle was to take people's laundry. You had to walk a half a mile one way to get your laundry done. It's cold, it's raining, it's all of the things. You old, anything, right? And who likes to do laundry? Raise a hand here. Anybody? I saw one person, I saw two people. Right. And so no, it's a chore that no one wants. And so I was telling my friend this, and he was like, yo, you should do that. And I was like, do what? He said, you should do people's laundry. And I was like, I didn't really do their laundry. I just took it to be done. And it really, it rose out of that conversation. But I'd like to tie this in that, it goes back to trying to figure out A, what people need, and B, how you can support people, or how you can support those things that people consider low-hanging fruit, right? Because standing up a coffee shop is a lot of work, right? Standing up an operation that helps people learn how to use their cell phones or computers when they're returning from prison is a lot of work. We're talking about men and women who may have not even understood a phone something outside of a rotary phone, right? Very, very difficult. But there are some things that we do every day that most of us within an organization can put our heads together and do and figure out some processes around it. And those are the things where we make the most impact, right? Because we have a good foundation of knowledge for those things. And so I would just consider, I would just urge you to consider looking at, from an ideation perspective, looking at things that people within the organization are already comfortable with, they already have some knowledge of, and start trying to make that a starting point for how you figure out what's next for the organization.
One of the things I like about these three stories is that the opportunities you had or you selected were aligned with your mission, or like you said, your area of expertise already. They weren't, the impetus wasn't, we need revenue, let's go out and reach for this, right? Let's reach for something that's out there that we think may be a good idea. Instead, you looked within and said, hey, what's in our mission and how do we drive that? Several organizations in the development of this have relayed to us stories where their boards or their funders are saying, hey, just create this new line of business, right? Just do this, and then it'll help to fund the organization. Trina, I believe that you said that you see the cafe as a means to deliver your program, right? Like, can you tell us about how you avoided that mission drift and how your thinking evolved from this new line of business of let's create this restaurant to one that was embedded in the organization?
Sure. So we'll start with the fact that many of you may have been to the Community Matters Cafe, but do you understand that is an extension of the Charlotte Rescue Mission core programs? I've encountered many folks who will come in and say, oh, well, where is the mission? And I say, right outside. That big 5-story building that is behind there is our new facility. But when they were putting the strategy together for the Community Matters Cafe, the intent was never for the restaurant to be a profitable, business that is bringing in lots of money. The money that comes into the cafe goes right back into the programming for the students who are working alongside of the staff, some that you may not even recognize as students unless they identify themselves as a graduate from the core program. So their transportation, their housing, their uniforms, their workbooks that they need for their life skills program, all of that is funded by your purchasing a meal or a latte or a cup of coffee or any of the swag that we have in the store. And so the intent was always to make sure that we could be net zero. The restaurant makes money to fund that particular part of the Charlotte Rescue Mission program. Our core programs, the residential recovery, is already at no cost to the residents. And that is because of the donors and the business grants and the other funders that we have aside from federal and state funding. We don't take federal and state funding. So it's intentional. So we can work with the men and women for 4.5 months. But the aftercare, what we know is the longer we have someone connected to a structured program, the better opportunity they have to sustain that when they're no longer a part of the structure. And so the Community Matters Cafe was the first of a 6-month aftercare program that, again, requires no funding from the students who are in the program. Now it's, capped out. We can only take 16 students at a time because we know that the revenue we bring in is going to cover the rent and where they live, the transportation. We provide them a monthly bus pass, so they're not concerned about that. And the opportunity for them to not be concerned about not having the right pants or the right shoes to wear when they come to work.
Let's think a little bit about moving towards implementation. So once the idea was selected, you had to really take some time to validate its feasibility, whether or not, whether that was market research or a pilot program or a business model that you have to develop to meet the needs of the finance committee or your own due diligence or evaluating staffing expense. Whatever you did, there are so many steps along the way to say, okay, from ideation to implementation. As nonprofits, we have different governance models, right? And we've got some board oversight and approval. However, more often than not, the approval, meaning the vote, raise your hand and say aye, right, is less important than boards buying into where we're going and what this vision is. Bruce, what role, if any, did the governance structure that you have play in evaluating and approving the development of this to an earned income stream?
I'm still waiting for you to walk around like Phil Donahue, by the way. So just for the note.
It's coming. It's
Yeah.
coming. Just
I think he babysat me when I was a kid after school for a few years.
slightly disturbing.
Yeah, makes sense. So it was, I'll just tell the story. It was, here's an idea and pitching the idea. And I think a lot of you, your board members are also sort of key funders, right? And so there's this balance in the relationship. And I really remember this sort of ironic moment, and it was telling the story of our strategy around going for more earned revenue. And I looked at our funders, several of them are the same folks you all get money from. And I said, look, I don't want to have to come back to you in 2 years and ask for that same amount of money again. Because I know that you've got a room full, plus all the people online who are also going to be asking. And in this, particularly in this time, there's just a lot of competition for those dollars. And so they all looked at me and said, yes, that's exactly what we want. We want folks to think about how they can wean off of our philanthropic dollars and turn that into revenue, right? And for us, we had a pathway to do that. And the ironic part was then the afterwards was, well, you should still come back and ask us for more money, because they liked the earned revenue strategy and wanted to help contribute to get that off the ground. So we're sort of working through that right now as we seek to go from 40% to 80% earned revenue is our target over the next 5 years. And part of that's driven by the fact that our current funders and our current board members, our advisory board members, are very much in support of it, because they're also the ones who then can write the next check to the next organization rather than to keep funding us.
Trina, do you have any backstory to where the board was? I know you said they were apt to knock the building down. So what's it like to then say, not only are we not going to knock it down, we're going to spend a bunch of money on that?
So if any of you in this room know Tony Marciano, you know he doesn't take no for an answer. He says no means just not yet. And so he had to prove to the board that it was a viable effort. And so Social Venture Partners came alongside, and we participated in their program to get the seed grant. He did a presentation and won 3rd place. So there was your $20,000 to say, okay, we're going to get started here. And then, folks in the community, the reason it's named Community Matters Cafe is because Community Matters Insurance Partners came alongside us and said, you know what, we believe in this as well. And so at that point, the board was all in and continues to be all in. You said the word buy-in. Probably every day that the Community Matters is open, you will find at least one board member in there having a meal or scheduling a meeting or hosting their Bible study. The board is all in and shows it not only just by, voting that we operate it, but also bringing their dollars there as well.
So Cheryl, I know that while you don't have
I make all the
model.
decisions. They stop and start with me.
they do, don't they? Sort of fun sometimes, and other times you look behind you. I remember the first time someone brought me a real difficult decision. I was CEO, and I literally looked over my shoulder for the last person who had served as CEO when I was COO, and I was like, oh, this is me. Like this is me. So it's kind of fun sometimes, but in other times it's a little nerve-wracking. So as you think about, as you're going through this iteration to move it towards something that's real, were there steps along the way where you had to consult others and say like, hey, do I have this right? Am I headed in the right direction? Can you tell me what you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I could not have done this on my own, right? In fact, hell, I don't know that I would have started without someone else saying you should do that. So there have definitely been people along the way. And one person in particular, a guy, Paul Kwan, he owned a dry cleaners out in East Charlotte. And I was going around the city asking all of these dry cleaners and laundromats to, help me, be a processor, help me learn, help me understand. And man, I went to 50 and got 50 no's. I found Paul Kwan and he was like, you seem safe. Come back and see me. And Paul and I have been like in lockstep since then. He sold that dry cleaners and just shared all of this information with me and put me in contact with people not only here in the city, but outside of the city, people in the laundry industry. And those men and women have continued to help me. You were talking about getting buy-in from boards in terms of how to spend money, where to spend it, and all of those things. And for those, well, for me in the not nonprofit area, getting buy-in comes from the bank, right? I have to see those people to fund our success and fund our growth. And they don't always understand, or what I found is they didn't understand my business. My business is very different from a laundromat or a laundry service that has, equipment. At the time, we had no equipment. I had delivery vans, right? That was the only equipment that I had. And so trying to explain to them our value proposition and how we make money long term was difficult because they hadn't seen this sort of business. And so getting buy-in just from the board or from your board is very much akin to having to get buy-in from a banking representative and sometimes your team, your internal team, right? Because they're going to have to do this work with you. So, formatting that language for people to understand it in a way that works for them and then people outside of the organization it can be difficult. So definitely had to get buy-in along the way.
And in this town, a lot of the board members are bankers. So it's to your point.
Yeah, they could be the very person sitting across the table. Let's speak about that. At the last session, we talked about communications and how to tailor those communications to various groups. Can any of you speak to how you communicated this plan? Like once it's out there or now, how are you communicating to your donors and staff in the community to ensure that there's transparency there and continued buy-in in the idea?
I think for me, it's the easiest because everybody comes to the cafe. But, making sure that we're intentional around asking you to not just be served by our residents, our students, but to engage with them, to find out a little bit about who they are. We are always advertising and communicating our graduation. We graduate students the third Thursday of every month because we want to celebrate that they made it through that 6 months. One of the things that we need to do better in terms of that now is helping people understand that we're going to co-brand along with the Charlotte Rescue Mission so that that it's a little bit deeper than the students who are serving you or working back in the line. The one consistent thing that I will say, and those of you who are consumers, we rotate those 16 students every 6 months, but the quality of the food that is delivered never dips. The menu changes seasonally. Chef Kyle and his team they're phenomenal around the care that they put into training each and every student. And so if we start faltering there in terms of our service, in terms of the quality of the food, that's really where our communication breakdown would be evident. And I'm grateful to say that we, to this point, we just changed our menu last week, shameless plug, the fall menu's out, but the food is delicious.
Yeah, as long as you don't change the Brussels sprouts, we'll all be good. So,
Yeah, it's different flavors.
yeah. Good. Glad to know. Anxiety down. Once the programs and are up and running, these businesses, they don't run themselves. You undoubtedly have to make operational adjustments or staffing or marketing or gosh, we don't have the right financial system to account for the income. You got to continue to tinker to make any business work. And I'm interested in the learning that you had as a result of that tinkering. Bruce, I think you noted at one point that you learned a lot about how to operate your nonprofit as a result of this shift.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have in our partnership group folks from PwC who spent a lot of time as we were on this journey of monetization strategy, is what we called it internally, which is a super exciting word. But was really digging into sort of every aspect to figure out how do we create a pricing structure. And to create a pricing structure was very vulnerable because you're having to sort of expose all of your operation. How much does it actually cost you to do every single little thing, which we knew, but we did not know to the detail that we know now. And so part of that required a lot of conversations with staff, which began to then expose the sort of change, the potential and change, what it was going to look like, and then what we uncovered in that process. And so for us, it was a really crystal clear, I can't even say that word, crystal clear about what it takes to run the Center for Digital Equity down to the penny. My staffing costs, operational costs, how much does it take us to put a computer in the hands of the people that you all are serving so that they can do the great things that you're trying to help them, as an example. And through that journey, we've also then learned a lot about, okay, well, who benefits? I might be going to the next question, but who benefits from the result of this individual getting a computer? And the people who benefit second to the resident is always number one. But after the resident benefits after that, the person who they're going to go work for, their better health outcomes, our community, and those become the customers that we then go sell to.
Yeah, sometimes the person you believe is your customer is not your customer, right?
Yes.
I had exposure working with a group of serial entrepreneurs out in the Bay Area at one point in time, and they took us through a model called the Business Model Canvas. If you haven't played with it, it's out there. You can find it. Just Google it. And through playing with that model, we discovered that our customer was way upstream in the buying cycle, whereas we thought we were selling to the end user. It was actually way upstream because of those ancillary benefits, right? Because, oh, if this person gets it, then they actually do better, and I want to invest in that person.
Which has created a challenge in our team because they see themselves, as we do, serving residents, serving the folks in our community, which we do. But again, the resident is not the person who's paying for the service in our case. So who does pay for it, right? As we see all the funding dwindling, what's the next opportunity? And I'm never going to miss a good crisis.
Yeah. So, Shell, what did you learn about your own leadership as a result of running the business?
I'm still learning. That is ongoing. But I learned that my strength is in operations, right? That's where I thrive. Those are the things that just click immediately for me. And because I learned that that is my strength, that is my strong suit, in terms of teams and customers, I think that my customer, me as the founder of the Washroom Laundry Service, my customer is my people, right? And so in order for me to be good and present for my people, I have to clear some things out of my way. And all of the things outside of operations, I had to give up because I'm not good at them. I'm not good at marketing. I mean, I see black and white, right? I don't know which picture works and what color works. Finances, definitely not good. I can add and subtract, and that is, and I can multiply and divide, and sometimes the numbers don't make sense. So, all of those other things, I had to give up. But in running my business, my most valuable talent is being able to interact with people, my people, their people. And, anyone that comes into our washroom orbit and, sphere, I'm able to communicate with them and, form this relationship immediately. I don't know what it is, but washroom is everything to me. And so when these people come to work with us, work for us, I need them to know that. I need to communicate that well. And I need them to know that because it's everything to me, I want it to be everything to them. And so in doing that, it helps us to work well as a group, whether they're doing, I don't know, electrical work for us, or, helping us with a new computer system, or, helping me to be a better leader. I need those people to understand those things about me. And, that's kind of where I thrive, right? I want everybody to know that I love washroom laundry. Washroom blue is my favorite color.
Now that the marketing team selected that blue, right? Now you love it, right? Now you
Well, they
see it
have a
everywhere.
word for it.
Do they?
It's not washroom blue.
No. That'll be in the post debrief. Trina, what'd you learn about your staff as a result of running this business?
So we learned that the staff are professionals and can do the job and understand the need for pivoting when it's time to pivot. And, the coffee shop opened in 2019. So in 2020, we had this brand new coffee shop that we invested all this money into, and COVID shut us down in terms of operating and people coming out and being in the mix. And they pivoted quite phenomenally. Catering the Bank of America Stadium whenever they were having the vaccine clinics, encouraging folks to call in and, request us to do delivery service. We wouldn't have had the idea. At the time, I was the chief program officer, and I was not really touching the cafe. But the team got together and said, listen, we are not going to go down because we can't get people to come inside. And so they pivoted. They worked together. We lost a few staff members, because at the time we didn't have the ability to bring them on with benefits and with all the things the regular staff at the Mission had. But even the leadership at that time pivoted and said, okay, we can't afford to lose this team. So, you have to be open. The staff had to be willing to be all in. And for those of you who know, we're a faith-based organization. And at the end of the day, we prayed. And we were like, okay, God, you didn't bring us this far to drop us. And the staff were all in. And we're thankful that we were able to make some shifts and look at it now.
Hey, can I just add something about that COVID pivot? So when COVID came, everyone that worked for me at the time was female, and they had kids. And so on the day that the county decided to close the school, I lost every one of my employees in one day. One day, everybody walked out the door, and I got it. I get it, right? I'm a parent, right? My kids aren't in school now, but I understood it totally. And, to your point about praying, I sat at the time I had a brick and mortar dry cleaners out in East Charlotte, and I sat in the lobby by myself, and I was like, Lord, what are we going to do? Please help me now, because I don't know. I went from making money to nothing. And, prayerfully, because of, organizations that support laundromats and laundry services, they were out there, advocating that laundry services and laundry was essential service, right? We were able to come back to work relatively quickly, but I came back to work with no one. I had to find someone to work with me. And, as a result of that prayer, right? We got our prayers answered, and we were able to continue to work. I think, we shut down in March, and by the end of April, we were working 7 days a week, 7 days, and we worked 7 days for the rest of the year. Thankful for people who, wanted to go to work and needed to go to work. We were able to put some people to work and help some people in the community at the same time.
Yeah, it seems like so long ago in some breaths, and other ones it's like triggering, right? It's like that was an intense period of time for us all. All right, let's talk about on the other side. You're on the other side of it. You're running it for a while. You got organizations, and you need to think about how you evaluate and how you measure the success of these enterprises. I like to say you can't improve what you don't measure, and you can't know if you're successful if you don't define success. So, how do you measure success? And more specifically, how does financial sustainability of this earned revenue stream differ from mission impact when you're defining and measuring that success?
I'm 5'10". I've been measuring and I'm still not growing. And it's trying to get over 6 foot, but it's not happening.
Just change your license
Yeah.
like I do.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You just put whatever number you like. It's totally fine. No one cares.
I think like the three of us who had a chance in our prep call to talk more about this, but I think the three of us all really care, as do all of you, right, about the impact that we provide on the community, right? We're trying to help people live a better life in some capacity, some way, shape, or form. So for us, it is always centering the impact of the work that we're doing and the way that we measure that. And then second to that is how does the earned revenue, how does the revenue generating activities support that? That for us is a story that through the going deep into all the details and understanding those things has become clear to us, and we've figured out a pathway to do that. I think the other thing is, coming back to the last question, is it's situated our staff to maintain their focus not on, you don't have to go sell now. Keep being a digital navigator, keep supporting the community members, and let people like me go sell behind you to allow you to continue to do that work. And so that's some of the ways that we've thought about that.
So for us, it's a couple things. Graduates, right? Having celebration, but also seeing those graduates step into our longer term recovery program, which is Recovery Living, which is a period of 2 years. So a lot of our life skills graduates are saying, yep, I'm not ready to leave. So I'm going to go into your Recovery Living and get a job and still live in your transitional housing. But what we've been able to do now is expand the social enterprise into a landscaping facilities program. So now we have more life skills students who are working with our facilities team and out there doing landscaping. And then we've brought some life skill students into our core programs, into the kitchens. So we're expanding the model, which says we're doing something right, and it is successful. And then on the long term, we're starting to see graduates come back and be employed by the mission. And that to us says we planted a seed, we watered the seed, they went out and then they grew, and that it means so much to them to be impactful to folks who are coming behind them that they want to come back and work for us. And so the impact on the community means they're productive, means that they're spreading the word, that if you've been to other programs where you've paid thousands and thousands of dollars, you don't have to do that. You can come to the mission and we will love you where you are, and we will help you live life differently based on how much you put into the program. So that's how we're measuring. On the restaurant side, we are always looking at what sells, what doesn't sell, which is why we changed the menu seasonally. And so the staples like the Brussels sprouts, and the butternut squash soup, if you haven't had it, we ran out of it last week. So those are things that we're looking at to make sure that we continue to provide a quality product, so we can continue to get the word out.
It sounds like the programmatic outcomes, right? What happens to folks who've had these experiences in the cafe is something that you're speaking about first and foremost, rather than looking at profit margin.
Absolutely. It's about the impact. We always say we're here to serve our men and women that come into our program so that they can experience life transformation and that they can learn how to live differently. Keeping them in the program gives us the opportunity to help them to practice what they've learned.
Can I add one thing on that?
Please.
So for us, It was doing that and talking about, particularly in the health space, we were having a lot of residents call who needed a computer, and they ultimately were on some sort of health journey. Well, as we were going through this monetization process and uncovered through data and research that it costs a healthcare system about $200 for every missed telehealth appointment. My team at the center helps people in one case not miss those appointments because they have a computer and they know how to access it. So now we can then say, well, there's a customer, the healthcare systems, and we can go, hey, how many missed telehealth appointments do you have a year? We can then help them reduce that number, and then they can pay us to do that work, and we can continue to provide a broader impact across the community, which is sort of a result of going through this monetization process and really thinking about the impact, the sort of secondary impact beyond the individual.
Shell, how do you define success?
Well, it comes down to that top line revenue. But in this case, I will say that at Washroom Laundry, I try to hire people who have barriers to employment, right? What kind of person would I be if I didn't? And a lot of the men and women that come through, come through to work with us, I get to see some growth there. And I'll give you one example, which is probably the most recent. A young man was recently released from prison. In fact, December will be 1 year. So last year in December, he was released from prison. He came to work with us in February. He didn't have a license. He had his ID and all of that. And I hired him without a license. And all of the people that worked for me at the time was delivery drivers. I gave him my car so that he could go and take his driver's test. I took him to start his first bank account. And I also helped him to get his insurance. And after working with me for about 2 months, there's this car auto body shop that we use when we have a little fender bender or whatever, right? And he typically restores cars and sells them. And this particular gentleman didn't have a car, and he lived not far from our shop at the time, but he would take the bus in that short distance. But I introduced him to our auto body guy, sold him a car, and then I helped him get insurance on this car. He is still driving that car. He's coming up on 1 year post incarceration. He's still working with us. He has a second job now, right? But he is on his way to, having his own place. And those kinds of things are successful to me, right? He is just the most recent person that has come to work with us that I believe has, found his footing in terms of, is he being productive? Absolutely, he's being productive. He has a family outside of his own family, not just the Washroom Laundry family, but my family as well, right? And those things make me happy. And if I can continue to do those things and help people in the community, I think that what we're doing at the Washroom Laundry Service is a success.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, we're going to take a pause for a minute, and we're going to ask you to do a little bit of work at your tables, all right? Each table or I'm going to do it. We'll do Phil Donahue now, right? Just here. Okay. Those in this column here, I want you to think at your table about this. Based upon what you've heard, what are the greatest challenges to implementing or growing, if you already have one, an earned revenue stream within your own organization? So within your own organization, what are those greatest challenges? Here in the center right stripe, for those that have an earned revenue stream, sometimes growth in volume of the business does not result in growth in profitability. So as you're thinking about your own business, right, whether earned revenue stream or otherwise, how do you evaluate whether or not your business should grow? So think about growth, right? Where's that come into the picture? In this stripe here, mission over business versus business over mission. What challenges can or does earned revenue pose to the achievement of our mission? And if you're thinking about it, how do you ensure mission alignment? What are the internal questions that you would ask yourselves if you're in this type of business or you're thinking about starting one? How do you ensure that you don't drift from the mission? And you've heard some great examples here. And then this stripe down here on the side, how do I think through current circumstances to a new way forward, to a new reality? How do I go from ideation to implementation? All right, what do I desire and what are those steps? What are the things, if you've got an idea brewing or you're being pushed or you're in your current situation, how do you get yourself from that ideation to implementation? What are the steps you need to take? We're going to take just a few minutes, think about those. Those who are online, you get the lovely choice of being able to delve into any of the four, and Ish will be monitoring the chat and can keep that chat going. At the end, I'm going to ask you to have someone tell us a little bit about what you learned from your table. So take a few minutes.
Go back on your instructional engineer and you're like, you're not a structural. You're not know to sell.
Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, actually, the main digital navigator service. And he was sort of like starting it at the same time as I was, and we partnered, and then we took over the continued operation, send those folks, and so. Yeah.
Somebody in the class who I also know sent us a text yesterday, someone about some.
You'll take just a few more minutes to summarize your thoughts and make sure you got somebody who's willing to report out. We had that meeting. So it's not just the goal levels. Yeah. The big science, it's the IMCA. It is. It's a lot of towels. We used to just sit and wash towels all day, every day, 3 machines. Yeah. The Jewish Community Center over on Providence Road. Maybe. Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna get us started. All right, I'm gonna get us started here. Let's start with our first group over here. We're thinking about greatest challenges to implementing or growing an earned revenue stream. Who wants to start us off? Yeah.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah.
Repeat.
Okay. So Karen Sutton's gonna speak to us a little bit from Levine Museum. She's going to tell us a little bit about the greatest challenges to implementing or growing an earned revenue stream within your own organization. So tell us about your conversation. What are some of those challenges?
All right, thank you. Again, Karen Sutton with Levine Museum of the New South. And one of the greatest challenges for us in particular that we spoke about was needing an actual physical location. We are in transition and have been for a few years now. Hopefully, we will have a solution to that soon, but it's not going to be an immediate overnight thing. So that's one of our greatest challenges right now in helping us to generate income. Some of our other colleagues at the table for Make-A-Wish, we all are aware of Make-A-Wish and what they do for kids, the awesome work. So it's just about how do we now generate revenue, off of that. It almost is kind of like an oxymoron if you think about it. It's like, ooh, we're helping kids, and it's easy for people to donate to make their wishes happen, to now pivot into how can we actually generate a profit from granting these wishes. And then with Theater Charlotte, they have a location which is great for us. However, just because of limited space, some of their actors have to practice in the lobby. And so one of the things that our colleague mentioned is that some of the board members actually often talk about using classrooms and that sort of thing, but where are they going to do it? They only have 3, physical pieces of their space. And so those are just some of the challenges that we are experiencing from the organizations at our table. Thank you.
Thank you. Real world challenges, right? Not only, how do you generate it, but from where do you generate it sometimes is the challenge. How about over here? Other challenges, things to add. Yeah. It's like putting your finger on the side of your nose. Not it, right? Here you go.
Good morning. My name is Mary Gallivan. It's great to see all of you. We spent a lot of time just getting to know each other and hearing where we were on our journey or what experiences we have had. And I would say most people are earlier in considering it or have done it in past organizations. And really, it's about staff capacity and resources. People are working full-time in their day jobs. And how do you carve out the time to dedicate to thinking about what it looks like, to how you pilot it? Space was definitely an issue. Funding to get something off of the ground. And we just really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I think sometimes it's what do I have to stop doing in order to create the space to do it, right? It's not always about just layering on. It's about being really selective about are there things that we're doing that are not having the impact, and that's again why I say you can't improve what you don't measure, and you can't be successful if you don't define success. So if you start to define success and you start to say, hey, these things are not measuring up, it may be where your capacity lies to try something different. How about over here? Anybody want to jump in?
Good morning. I don't know why I volunteered to speak. I don't like public speaking. So our group, I think the biggest thing was making sure that the revenue stream is still mission aligned, making sure there's staff capacity to add additional things to our plate, and then just getting the word out beyond like if you have a physical space, spreading your wings.
Indeed. Let's think a little bit about that mission piece, right? We'll come over here. And I think y'all were talking about mission versus business, business versus mission, right? What did we learn?
We also spend a lot of time just getting to know one another and hearing about our organizations. We talked about a lot of us, I think, in this room serve the underserved or people from under-resourced populations, which definitely
I think poses a challenge for how to create a revenue stream working with the populations we're working with. So just being mindful of that. And I think we just kind of helped each other brainstorm, honestly, some different opportunities that we talked about, like rental spaces where our offices are. Could that create revenue? We talked about like if we're serving an under-resourced particularly I work with Wayfinders, and we work with under-resourced students from 4th through 12th grade. And so if we formed a cohort that also worked with children from more resource backgrounds, could that propose an opportunity for revenue from that population? So anyway, we were just brainstorming a lot, probably as everybody in the room.
Indeed, that's something that we've been talking a lot about with this series, right? How do we create that gathering space that builds what you just experienced there, right? A place to sit and think and bounce those ideas. All right, mission versus business, business versus mission. Where's the grappling come in here? I know this group. This is not a shy group, right?
We definitely were thinking, I'm Angie Bush, CEO at Hospitality House of Charlotte. We were definitely thinking it's more mission over business. Definitely finding those things where you have a strong alignment. I gave an example of a dumb idea that I had the other day. And that was, I'd spoken with someone and they said, well, because we're in the process of expanding, what you should consider doing is having a coffee shop in there. And I thought, oh my God, I love coffee. That's a good idea. It's a dumb idea. We're not going to have sufficient parking for people to come to even get there to get some coffee. So that didn't make a lot of sense. We do have a substantial amount of earned revenue. Our guests that come and stay with us, patients and families, they do pay $50, which does help to offset the cost of every night stay. But we've begun to think about some different ideas as we think about who is our real customer, who's benefiting from patients that are staying with us. Really, it's the hospital systems. So we're engaging in a different level of conversation with them to talk about, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, Bruce, about that kind of almost fee for service type of thing, or what value are we bringing, thinking about a real ROI that we have with our actual customer as well. Just thinking about things, I think, a little bit differently, ideating differently. And we talked to our teammates here at the table. What's the name of your organization? Hungaroo. And they have a really cute organization that takes stuffed animals from one place and puts them in the hands of kids in the hospital and things like that. And how could they monetize something like that? Well, probably not with the animals themselves, but they've also written a book. So maybe that's a way to have some earned revenue. Maybe you can pair that with AI, with some other strategy to get it more out there and gamify it in some way. Just thinking about things like that, I think, is key. And I know that we all have limited time. And one of the things that we've been really working on and that I'm really, really passionate about, and then I'm going to shut up after this, is that I really believe that we can utilize more of our time to ideate at work rather than in the shower and at night. And when we first think, if we can really utilize AI more effectively for our administrative tasks, to allow this, what I would consider kind of more whiteboarding type of time during the day when we're with our teammates, and we're really trying to lean much more into that to allow us the space to be able to think big. So shutting up.
Really like that in a couple places. One is that sometimes the place to find greater margin in our business is actually on the expense side, right? How do I eliminate an expense? How do I get somebody else to pay for an expense that I'd otherwise be paying for? So I wonder if there aren't toy makers out there who'd want to put their stuffed animals in somebody else's hand with their tag on it, right? Is there a upstream that defers costs that I'm having? Angie, it's probably not the most popular idea, but I'm thinking mini bars in the rooms, right? Might be the way, especially there's ones that when you touch them and they're motion detected and like it just charges automatically, right? Maybe not. It might be a miss. I don't know. Ask your board on that one. All right. What about here? What are we thinking about?
Hi, my name is Angel. I'm with the Family Crisis Council, Executive Director. We talked about mission being more important, but the business side being important as well. With our agency, Family Crisis Council, we support survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. So we have to be aware of things like a coffee shop or a bookstore or a thrift store may not be such a great idea because then abusers can easily find their victims. But something like transitional housing could align, it would basically kill two birds with one stone. It would provide housing for our clients as they exit our emergency shelter and also bring in revenue. That could be done on a very reasonable sliding scale basis. But of course, it would require a nice chunk of investment upfront.
Thank you. Again, swimming upstream. Here in the center, we were thinking about growth, right? Sometimes it makes sense to grow. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to grow. Yeah, Kim, that's what happens when you announce your retirement. Everybody's like, just make her do it. Just make her do it.
Yeah, well, I might have been a bit passionate at the table. So we talked about a couple of things. We talked about the gray line between mission and business, and how do you not cross that while crossing it at the same time. We talked about the thing I got passionate about was when we first started as an organization. I'm with Aparo, for those of you who don't know. And we serve other nonprofits, so a little different, not that direct service. So when we were in the early stages and we were thinking, do we grow, do we not grow? We had the discussion with the board about, well, why do we have to grow? Why don't we just serve? We'll do what we do well, and we'll just do it, right? We'll just do it. But then it became very clear, and this is where it became the mission versus the business, was that if you don't grow, you can't keep your people, because you don't have more money to give them more salary increases. And you then, as you even get further, you realize you can't create an infrastructure where people can be challenged and grow in their career. So you have to lose them, because if they're going to grow as professionals, they can't grow in your organization. So it becomes this business imperative that you have to grow in order to keep the talent and the skills and the institutional knowledge that you want to keep. So then, and when you're at that stage, it becomes really challenging. How do you grow? And I've got to pay for this growth. And then we talked about this gray line of what's your asset. And three of us were talking about to have assets that are students that come into their program to do work in the programs, and other, what are the clients that maybe banks want to get to, or hospitals want to get to, with things that they want to share with this potential client base for them, right? So you could monetize that. But are you then maybe using your clients? Is that a fuzzy area? How do you grapple with that? And also the work, because that means events. You're going to stand up events so people can have access to which we do a ton of, and it is no easy task, but it also is a really great monetization. So I don't know, did I miss anything? Okay, that's where we were.
It's a great discussion, and one that I love, which is, how much do we have to grow in order to just maintain, right? I had a mentor tell me a long time ago that if I grew my revenue by 5%, it meant that I could grow my expense by 3%. And by golly, it almost works every time, right? And then you start thinking about, okay, well, is that growth in rate and how much I charge for what I do, or is that growth in volume of how many people do I bring in, right? When you have an earned revenue stream, you're really thinking about those two levers, rate and volume, and how they work in tandem with one another. But as an affordability, right, as well, of, okay, if I want to give a 3% raise, it really means that I got to generate about 5% more in revenue in order to keep that same margin moving forward. What about here?
Good morning. I'm Sarah Lanners-Avinger with YWCA. And a couple of us were talking about the fact that we have existing earned revenue strategies, but it's really, the question is continuing to invest in those or pushing the investment further. And that in order to grow those earned revenue strategies, we would need to invest in them more financially, manpower, all of those things, and the risk that comes with that. And so we didn't come to any sweeping conclusions about that, but that was really the discussion that we had. Anything y'all would add? Takes money. Yeah, takes money to make money.
Yeah, and where that investment goes in is really the base of the conversation or the nexus of the conversation that we should be having. Okay. I've got along this line, right? We're thinking a lot over here about current circumstances. How do you move it forward, right? How do you go from a place of we're sitting in this spot and we want to be in that one? What are those steps? Who wants to jump in?
Hey, good morning. I'm Donna Stecker with the Levine Museum of the New South. And we talked about really making sure you're not making the decision in a silo, making sure that everybody's involved with that ideation process, from the staff to the board to executive leaders, just so it really is a whole collective approach. And then making sure the mission stays number one at the forefront, making sure everybody understands what the mission is first before the idea goes any further, because a lot of ideas are wonderful, but then, does it really make sense for the mission? And then just going into almost like an impact grid and making sure that everything aligns from the idea to the mission, making sure all the pieces are matching and lining up. And in particular, just a really deep understanding of the cost that's involved. Again, going from the idea sounds great, but what is it really going to take to bring it off the ground? And then just being able to articulate all of this, to have it in writing, have a business model, have the return on investment very clear, I think would be really helpful. Did I miss anything? No? That's our table.
Yeah, I love that idea of messaging, right? That not only once you have decided, how are you going to then push it forward, right? How are you then going to think about where does this go? Yeah?
Hi, Jennifer Fry with Caring. So we were talking about, one of the things we brought up was talking with our funders about what it is that we're looking to do in terms of going into a potential revenue generation model to see, get their thoughts, see if there was any buy-in from them, as well as trying to understand like the end user who's going to be using it. Is this truly a need that they have? Of the service that we're trying to come up with to generate. Something else. Oh, yes. Short-term pilot as well, just to kind of test it out before we got it like truly up and going. So anything else I missed? That's it.
Really great things to keep in mind. That end user in mind is central to knowing whether or not you have a viable model. What about over here? Who wants the last word? Things that we thought about. How do we go from stasis to moving to a new reality? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Christy Thomas from E2D. We were kind of building off the message piece, talking a little bit about older thinking and the idea that nonprofits should not make money. And how do you get people to understand that an income model is going back into your business, and how do you change that mindset? Because that's definitely something that we have run into a couple times with our case of, well, I don't want you to do that. You're a nonprofit. You shouldn't make money. And so that education, that messaging piece, I think, was where we spent a lot of our time talking.
Plays right to my favorite phrase of all, right? Non-for-profit is our tax status. It's not our goal. We're in business to make money, right? We just have a different tax status. And so the great thing is we get to pump all the money back into our business to deepen and broaden our impact. But we can't do that if we're poor, or if we don't have any money, right? So let's think about that. Bruce, how do you avoid
Bill?
over-dependence upon earned income? You're talking about moving from 0 to 40 now, your goal to move to 80. Is there a piece of this where you say like, gosh, we're no longer complementing philanthropy, we're actually subtractive to what we're doing, or is it all additive? Where's that balance?
Time will tell, I suppose. It feels additive because most of the earned revenue that creates any sort of profit is unrestricted dollars, and who doesn't love unrestricted dollars? And so I think there's an element of, I'm just, grew up with a father in sales, so I'm thinking of all these awful salesy terms here, but I feel much more in control of our future when we have a service revenue generating opportunity. If we think about our funding, even though roughly 10% of our funding is an endowment draw from the Knight Foundation, 45%, 40 to 50, depends on the year, is grants and service, or sort of grants and philanthropy, and then the other is service revenue. And so, as I think about on the grants and service revenue, it's, 5 or 6 folks. I'm sorry, on the grant side, 5 or 6 funders, but on the service revenue, it could be 20 or 30 folks. So it's just less risky if I have a lot more customers and they're sort of each having a piece. If I lose one customer, if I lose a philanthropic organization, that could be 30% of my budget, but if I lose a customer, that could be 1%. And so for us, it's sort of the risk analysis. On another question that I can take in a whole other hour to talk about, but I won't, is around sustainability. A phrase that I hate because nothing lasts forever, but that's a different story. The sustainability, at least in the next 10 to 20 years, seems much more in our control when we have a piece of it that is more directly tied to our ability to go out and do the work and deliver on the work and sell the product to a larger customer group than a smaller group of philanthropic funders who care about our mission, who also care about all of your missions at the same time.
A lot of wisdom in that. A lot of business terminology, but things that we should be thinking about, right? Like, what is our risk analysis? How over-dependent or under-dependent are we on these? Where is that capacity? Trina, do you think at all about ensuring how earned revenue complements rather than replaces philanthropy?
We do, actually. When we first opened the Community Matters Cafe, it was its own enterprise. It had its own 501c3. It was operating as a separate entity, and we have since merged it into one. So now they are a part of the overall Charlotte Rescue Mission. For us, what that does is make sure that all of our expenses and all of our revenue, what money does come in, is all going into one pot. We did realize early on that if the cafe didn't make money, the rescue mission had to make up the difference. And so, eliminating overhead, sustainability, those were important for us to figure out how do we contain the costs so that we can expand the life skills programming. So, you're not going to see 5 Community Matters Cafe restaurants across the county. But we absolutely look at how does it support the number of students. And if we have more students that we can support, then we look at expansion. But again, it's based on the residents and the students that we can serve. And so far, I mean, it's working for us as it does now, but the launch into landscaping is kind of our first test at how do we expand and see how many students can we serve in that social enterprise as well. So it will be different social enterprise opportunities that make sense, that pour into the desires and the needs and the skill set for the residents that we're graduating.
So, Shell, if you were advising a nonprofit who's just beginning to consider earned revenue, what's the most important lesson you'd share?
It's funny that you asked me that because I was going to ask this panel to help those in the audience that are really thinking about getting started. What would be the first step? And so I think first it would be understanding what you might be good at, right? Because what they say, what's the analogy? Do what you like and it never feels like a job, something like that, right? So figure out something that you are good at and that you like to do, and maybe start from there. But the other thing is to figure out if there is a market for it, right? Because there are a lot of coffee shops, there are a lot of people making t-shirts. There are a lot of, the market is saturated with a lot of things, right? And so trying to figure out, some niche area that is considered low-hanging fruit. And believe me, that is tough. That is tough. It takes time. And so that leads to kind of the third thing is, really give yourself some time and grace to figure it out, right? Put in the work to understand what the addressable market is for that thing that you're going to do. Like, how many people are there that actually need that? How many people are there that can pay for that? Because the goal here is to make some money. And just kind of work backwards, right? Start to build out this huge list, and then start to pick away at it, poke holes at it, find reasons why it won't work, right? And you'll get to a point where you'll figure out that everything will work for this particular thing. And then you start to form plans around that.
Bruce, there are a lot of coffee shops and a lot of t-shirt shops, as Shashelle said, but there's only one Center for Digital Equity.
That's right.
What is it?
Said there are a lot of
What's-
laundry places.
You should have, but it's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
No, there's only one. It's called Washroom. You don't need to worry
Right,
about the other one.
washroomlaundry.com and you're done.
Right.
right?
Yes.
If you were advising folks in the room, what's the lesson where you look back now and you're like, yeah, I wish I had thought about that a little more.
Providing advice is now a revenue stream, so get out your checkbooks. No, I'm kidding. Okay, gonna just answer the question the way I have it in my notes here real fast. I think that one thing we haven't talked about, and I know it's a conversation that's happened in Charlotte over the time, and I'm curious how many of this has happened in the Share Charlotte world, but sort of M&A, mergers and acquisitions, right? That's a pathway to growth. If you think about different, you partnering with another nonprofit and potentially generating revenue off of that or whatever that looks like. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't sort of come back full circle to the Queen's Elon and the front page. I mean, these are two large nonprofit organizations with, $100 million plus annual or, budgets that are talking about merging, right? So that should be on the table. Second, I think, is philanthropy as a seed to revenue generation, right? A smaller ask to try out some of the things that you've talked about is more palatable, reduces your risk, gives you a chance to go try and have that time to go explore like you were talking about. Start small, replace one item or expense. So if you can sell a collectible teddy bear, that sort of, if you're going to sell $10,000 worth of collectible teddy bears in the holiday season, maybe that replaces one expense on the budget of the organization we were talking about here. Which reminds me of the start of the Airbnb example. And if you've ever heard his story, he talks about, the founder of the Airbnb talks about traveling to New York to take the photos of the first Airbnb listing and to write the check with his own checkbook, right? Start small, do things that aren't scalable that then create the opportunity to grow. And then the last thing I would just sort of situate is where we're physically at today. The irony of having this conversation at the Goodwill Opportunity Campus, that's model is literally based on generating revenue to do good in the community. So look across our group of partners, look to Goodwill. Full disclosure, I serve on the board here. That's why I'm giving it a plug. But as example and models to learn from, things that will help you go faster and learn quicker.
Trina.
To add to what these folks have said, consistent messaging. Over the long haul, be consistent. And in the last year and a few months since I've taken over at Charlotte Rescue Mission, that's what we're working on, from our philanthropy team to our marketing and communications team to every employee. That my motto is every employee is an ambassador for the organization, but you can't be an ambassador if you don't know the message. And so if you're wanting to start something, make sure that you find what it is, create your messaging around it, and then make sure that that messaging is consistent. We speak of life transformation, and that's the message at Charlotte Rescue Mission. But even still, we're going deeper. Our philanthropy team has to go deeper with those who are donating. Our grants coordinator has to go deeper in searching for funders that fit the pillars that we believe in. But the messaging must be consistent. What I don't want is somebody calling the admissions team, asking a question about what we do and being told one thing and then the counselors saying something different. And so consistency is key if you want to start something new, particularly for an organization like ours that's been around since 1938. If we shift from our mission and we drift away and our messaging drifts away, we're not going to be open.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Okay, we've tried to have a pretty wide-ranging conversation. We recognize also that there is tremendous wisdom in the room. What are the questions that we have not asked that you have? Yes, ma'am.
Community Matters is separate. Did everyone hear that? Why was Community Matters initially set up as a separate 501c3?
So the prior leadership thought that it was going to be a hospitality social enterprise. And so they set it up that way. And if you know, hospitality, you have a lower compensation, plus you have tips and there was no benefits, and it was operated like a true restaurant. The kind of the benefit of COVID was that the leadership decided at that point, that doesn't make sense for us. We're going to lose all of these employees. And so then they added benefits and added a straight salary and had to restructure the finance plan. And then we kept it that way. And so now we're merged into one organization.
1,990, 5,500, one, right? Like,
One, you know, everything. Literally last year was our last year of having to do two. So the administrative overhead and all the costs and fees for all that will now be one organization.
other questions? Yeah.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lavon McLean with Aparo. Question for you. As you were looking, especially as you do things and then you're looking to pivot or add something, talk about or give any suggestions, advice on the change management process for staff, especially for people who've maybe been there a long time, been doing certain things a long way, and they're like, you know, the uncertainty that comes with change as you add something new.
We met at Community Matters Cafe last week, by the way.
It's the networking. I can take it.
I can too, whatever.
We've had huge change at Charlotte Rescue Mission. Tony Marciano was there 28 years and this, you know, was working towards retirement as I started there in 2019 in a completely different role. And so what I say for change management, in terms of the cafe coming on board, our recovery living program that was birthed out of COVID, you know, and, you know, thinking about the fact that Doug Lebda passed away unexpectedly last week, Lending Tree Foundation birthed the recovery living program with its alliance cohort that we were a part of. And so when you look at change and the need to pivot, for us, it was being transparent and bringing the idea, you know, from our board to the staff in general, that this is what we want to do, but also being willing to listen and to collaborate with other organizations to make sure that we could carry the idea across the finish line. And so in the last year, it's just, you know, open communication, consistent with the messaging about the changes that were going to take place. You can't come into an organization that's been run by someone for 28 years and just be like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so I had to cheerlead, you know, and Tony had to really do a good job cheerleading for me as I was coming in to take over. And then as we are pivoting with the way we are putting our emphasis on the long-term programming, we went from 30 beds in the community to 130 beds in the community for our recovery living residents who are living in the community, partnering with Commonwealth Charlotte, doing a lot of things out in the open and building up our alumni program so that they can come back and talk to the folks that are in our residential programming. So you just have to be open and understand that there's going to be people who don't like change. And you can't make everybody happy, but you've just got to be consistent, and key is build a really well-balanced leadership team. My leadership, the 4 chiefs that I have in the organization are very well balanced and they work really well together. And we spend a lot of time building that relationship over the last year.
I'm going to reiterate because I was taking a couple notes and just echoing change as a constant. I think every organization is in change, particularly now, but oftentimes I think to your point, you might be in change, but the people might not. They sort of like consistency. So for us, it's sort of the culture that change is just part of the way we do business, especially in a technology driven sort of organization where we're helping people learn new technologies. We're sort of constantly having to learn, and so that's part of the culture. So and then the second one is this is one of these, this is Tracy, this is the I didn't get enough sleep last night comment. I was joking. What am I going to say today? Because I didn't get enough sleep today. We're a team, not a family. I mean, and I think at some point you got to say it, right? The best performers get to play on the team. And that's the kind of organization, especially when you're trying to do impact and create impact in the community. For us, it's really having those tough conversations. If folks aren't willing to change, they can not like change, but if you're also not willing to change, then for us, we wish you well. We'll help you in that transition, but we've got a mission and we're going, right? And the train is running. Insert your analogy there, but a team, not a family, and change is constant are our two that we've sort of abided by.
The other thing I would add is that there is a pace of change that folks can tolerate and those that we can't. Just the human nature of change says, I need something solid to stand on. I need to know that when I come to work that not everything is shifting around me. And so as you think about implementing change, especially in longstanding organizations or organizations with longstanding employees, how quickly can you go about that, right? And how do you select something that's got a high probability of success as your first piece to change so that you get a little bit there of like, oh, okay, that's working, right? I got some feedback recently, and one of the things that I loved about the feedback was we didn't really like what he was doing when he first got here at all. But now we can look back and see that like, oh, that actually worked. Like that was a good change, right? But we didn't like it, as Trina said at the beginning, because it was just change, right? It was there. All right, I'm going to take one from online. We've got a great question. And the question says, or the question is, how do you know an earned revenue direction that you've chosen is a successful solution to continue? Is there a certain percentage of revenue that you want to aim for? If it replaces one line item in your budget, as Bruce suggested, is that success? So how do you know? So Shell, is there a margin that you're aiming for that you're like, well, gosh, if it doesn't have 33%, I don't want it? Or is it a little more nuanced than that?
It's a little bit of both, right? We strive for a 35% margin, so you were right up in there. But it's also about how long it takes to lift off, right? We launched a new product line earlier this year, sneaker cleaning, and everybody that we talked to, we did some surveys and some people polling about how many people would pay for it and what that price point would be, and we got some really good feedback, and we tried to implement that exactly along the lines of the feedback and the surveys that we did, and it has been slow, very, very slow. We are in month. We launched in March, right? So we're just about what, 9 months, almost 6 months, 6 months. And I'm ready to cut it, but My team is like, we should just hold on a little bit because they're trickling in 1 or 2 a month. And we had expectation that there would be 5 to 6 per week, and we're nowhere near that. And so just my personal experience is to, kind of cut it while we're ahead. But my team suggests that we give it more time, right? Especially seeing how this economy is changing and it's changing quickly. Do we want to wait any longer? No, I don't think so. But the team thinks that we should. And so because it is not the family and it is a team, and I have to, I take input from somewhere. I can't just, I won't just say no to it. We're going to continue on, but next year this time, if we're still kind of at the same place, it's gone. I'm going to do it.
So one of the things that you said is actually, I think, the most informative piece to this part, and that is that you knew going in what you wanted your margin to be. Okay. So for the question online and for those in the room, I think that's huge, right? Have I done the business analysis to understand what I want the outcome to be? And then the discipline to hold true when the leading indicators and the lagging indicators don't show up in that way. So your leading indicators, right, are the things that you're watching these metrics come in, and you're saying, boy, this should show up as business. I think this is going to show up. If I've got, 1 pair a day, essentially, is my target, right? Well, how many folks do I need to reach in the leading piece of that, right? What's my exposure? What's my reach over here? Oh, it's going to show up. And oh, the lagging indicator could be that, we had 1 in the first week and we had 2 pairs by week 4, and we've actually got 8 pairs by week 12. And so I'm growing, but I'm growing at this smaller rate than I want to have. How do I go back over here, and how do I look at leading indicators that could push in? But if you don't start with the margin at the beginning of this is what I'm aiming for, it's really, really hard to define success. Trina, do you have other thoughts on that earned revenue margin
Nate,
piece?
Exactly. And again, I think I said it earlier, our plan was always to be a net neutral social enterprise. If we operate the business, it pours back into the students, their living situation, their transportation, their uniforms. So for us, the events that we hold, that we're asking for sponsors for the cafe event that we do and the clay shoot event that we do, those are to support the revenue that comes in from what we sell. Anything above that just pours back into the rescue mission. And so ultimately, that's really what we want to see, as opposed to the rescue mission having to cover any deficits for what the coffee shop is not making. And so it's important for us, every month looking at the expenses, what are we purchasing, what's being donated, what are we selling, what's the overhead, and making sure that it covers the expenses for those students. And so we are looking at that monthly. And that has been the entire time that the cafe has been open. Those of you who know Ashley Anna, who is the director, you see her buzzing around like a little bee. That's her job, is to make sure that our staff pattern, that our expenses, and that the revenues that we generate cover those expenses.
May I just add one thing, right? For smaller organizations, I think that looking at those finances on a monthly basis could be a little bit too late, right? Because of the way that we spend money and the way that money comes in. And so for us, we continue to look at our revenues and our accounts receivable and accounts payable weekly, only because the goal here is to really understand. We want to use that information, as data to make decisions as we go forward. So the decision to start doing sneaker cleaning, right? We need to understand what our revenues are and how much we have coming in. And so having a shorter frequency of looking at your revenue could be beneficial.
Well, real quick, because it sounds like a hot off the press question came in off the back, but I think with the way a lot of us probably write our grants is cost, right? We think, how much does it cost me to go do this? Or maybe you're a little bit more cost plus, but what you're really trying to get to is the value that you're providing, and that's ultimately where you're going to get that margin. And so for those of you that are like, that's a lot of buzzwords, my suggestion, and I mean this genuinely, you're going to maybe chuckle a little bit. Cost plus value, your organization's mission, ask ChatGPT to get you started to kind of think about those three differently, because I think that's a shift, even in applying for grants, that you have to think about differently beyond cost, because it will just keep us in that perpetual cycle, and we won't get any runway, any oxygen that we need to breathe and to have the time to go think deeper.
Love it. All right, the question that came in, indeed, hot off the presses, right, is for you, Bruce. We know that digital equity is important, but did any of your funders require you to prove your theory of change with local data before funding your growth?
All right, can we find out who asked this question for later?
Yeah, it's from Promising Pages.
Promising Pages, awesome. All right, thanks for the question. One more.
Okay. We know that digital equity is important, but did any of your funders require you to prove your theory of change with local data before funding your growth?
So we have, I think the short answer is yes. And part of that is driven by the fact that one of our 7 values is transparency, and we've publicly reported annually to the community for going on 5 or 6 years now. So the data, the receipts, as they say, we bring the receipts twice a year to the public, not just to our funders. It's the same, our funders get a version of that same report every year. And so they've seen the impact of the work. We have evolved that reporting based on their feedback and then tied this revenue generating conversation into that. So we've said, here's the things that you were looking for. Yes, number of computers out the door, number of people who help sign up for internet, number of people connected to a place like Goodwill to learn new skills is important. But they're now have been asking us additional information about, okay, well, did that person actually get a better job? Did they actually have better health outcomes? And those are ways that we're sort of shifting our reporting and then tying in the revenue model and the investments that we already have, leveraging some of that capital to go do these revenue generating activities. And so they approved us using these funds to go try these things out, I guess is the most honest way to say it.
I love the question. I think the question gets to the root of what Seychelle talked about earlier of going to the bank, right? And sometimes we treat these conversations with donors as just that, right? Like, I want you to give me money without a whole lot of basis on the back end of, and then this is what happens with that, right? And I think that if we really look at it in the way that we have to in the for-profit world of, you wouldn't go in somewhere and say, just give me $50,000. And they'd say, well, what for? And you'd say, because I need it. Right? You'd have to justify what that was going to do, what impact that was going to have. And so I think as we think about how do we propel our organizations forward, one of the most important things is to go back and center ourselves on mission and center ourselves on impact. And if we can tell that story, right, that ChatGPT prompt, right, all the way through, and you get to the end of the story and you still have a story to tell, then you've really hit on something there that's likely to propel you forward.
You said it when you said this other component is the social capital involved in all of this, and you said that the person you mentioned, he said you were safe, or some way that you described that relationship opening up, and I think that is the other component, the other ingredient in this mix that we're building here is the social capital. That it's yes, so I can bring you all the data and receipts, but that also folks have a sense of who you are and who your organization is and who the people are. And that's been a thing that our funders have been asking us for is like, yeah, we like seeing your face, Bruce. That's great. But like, let's have your other folks on your team come. We want to see and feel the folks. And that's all tied back to social capital that then creates actual capital.
Yeah. Yeah. The outcomes as well as the outputs, right? Your outputs of your profitability is one thing, but is it helping to fuel the organization and drive it forward?
I would also say that messaging part, that goes back to marketing, right? And I don't know how well nonprofits do at marketing. You talked a lot about messaging, right? But for a for-profit business, marketing is everything. And one of the things that is creating a lot of positive input and buzz right now is, you know, showing, you know, opening up the hood, or, you know, letting people see behind the curtain, right? People want to see what your team is doing. They want to, you know, understand them. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and it was all about business. And there was this huge marketing person from someplace up in New York, and, you know, has millions of followers. And they said that adding information to your website about your team, what makes them happy, their family and friends, and their hobbies and those kinds of things are all positive marketing tools, and that everyone should be doing them, because people fall in love with a person, not necessarily a you know, a thing or a service, a product or a service. And so letting people see your team in action is positive marketing, and, you know, getting out a positive message. Yeah.
I want to welcome up my colleague, Tracy Russ, who's going to take a minute to try to summarize our conversation, tell us what's next. But as we move to that, I want to thank all three of our panelists today for putting themselves out there, for taking your questions, and for thinking with us. And I want to thank everyone who's in the room and online for contributing to the discussion today. We are stronger because of the diversity of voices in the room and because of our willingness to engage. So thank you very much.
Great job. Thank you, Peter. Great job. It's time to wrap up. Bruce is getting punchy, arrived punchy. So we have come to the conclusion of our 6th workshop in a series that will continue, as we've shared, based on your input. And it is already an incredible journey. I want to give a series of thank yous and acknowledgements because we're at a milestone. First, thank you, I want to note, is also a Pharrell, and that is to Mr. Doug Lebda, founder of Lending Tree in our community, a philanthropist, an innovator in business, and a friend to the nonprofit community and Foundation for the Carolinas, the Robinson Center for Civic Leadership. So we're thinking of the Lebda family and all of the colleagues at Lending Tree, including April Whitlock, who is a friend to many in this room and is an innovator in her own right in the nonprofit sector. When we lose a leader that's impactful to community, we always hope that we can live up to the legacy that they're leaving behind. And I think that that will happen. And I think he will be proud of what's to come. I want to thank everyone on the panel today. Bruce, thank you so much. You did well with no sleep. Peter, great facilitation. Seychelle, thank you for joining us. I reached out to Seychelle because she is a grantee from the Beyond Open Small Business Grant Program. You are the first small business rep or for-profit entity that's been involved in this series so far, but we thought there are lessons to be learned and dynamics that we could all learn from. And indeed, that's proven to be true. So thank you. And Trina, you really marked the convergence of those two influences so well. And thank you for walking us through the story of what's going on at Community Matters and the larger organization, and giving everyone inspiration to explore what's possible. So thank you, thank you. I always want to thank, on behalf of Foundation for the Carolinas and the Robinson Center, our partners without which this would not be possible, with Share Charlotte, with the Lee Institute, with United Way. We will continue in collaboration and partnership as we move forward into 2026. And we'll continue to base what is offered based on your input, your voice, as we're moving forward. I also want to thank our host here at Goodwill. They've been an amazing host for the last 3 sessions, this one inclusive. I don't know, it makes the numbers have actually grown every session here. So do remember, we will probably switch venues in the community. So when you get the next notice, you probably won't be here, but we'll let you know what that venue is. Do know that one of our goals is to be out in community. We will have some future sessions at the foundation, but our goal really is to be out out in the community and with people. So be on the lookout for a nonprofit location. In terms of what's next, as I said, we will continue the agility workshops, topics TBD based on your input. Thinking January will mark the return of the series there. Also, you've heard us talk about leveraging our business community and for-profit sector and the expertise and wisdom and experience that is in that sector to connect with you, to pair with nonprofit organizations and provide the benefit of that experience because it's a community strength to utilize. And I do want to recognize Carrie Reeder, who's in the room and is helping us in partnership with CELC to coordinate that effort. And that will be moving forward. You'll hear more about it. It will start small as a pilot, and we will grow it from there. So be on the lookout. And then finally, now that we've reached the end of the 6th workshop, we'll wrap up learnings, lessons, and resources. We will place that on a revised digital agility hub at the foundation's website and have limited printed versions of that available. Goal there is to give you a place to start 24/7 access to resources as you need them. As we're moving forward, no matter what this Agility Together initiative includes, whether it be workshops, the core, resources, our commitment to you as a set of partners is that we will continue to innovate. We will continue to pivot and adapt just like you are doing right now. I don't know what this entire effort will look like a year from now, but I do know that we will be here and we will be steadfast in our commitment to standing with you and make this journey alongside you. And we will continue to offer what you say is beneficial and what we can offer that we see as beneficial as we're moving forward. And finally, I would just want to note that in the realm of exploring options and being creative, that changes in the tax code have now incentivized private sector organizations, corporations, businesses to support nonprofits in a fee-for-service model. So everything you've heard today about how you might interpret, share, describe, tell the story of what you do in your mission that could help meet the business interests and the business goals of those who have been funders as grantors would be well worth the time. And perhaps that's a topic we can explore. But I wanted to bring that up because that's a real change. It's active right now. And it's something you can begin thinking about immediately, but it's not a different lane of thinking. It's everything you've heard up here today. I think that's it. Other than the party, what is this party? So we would love to both thank all of you and party with you at a special event on December the 1st at the Duke Mansion. And Peter has very kindly offered to host this event for all of us. We just want you to have the opportunity to gather. There literally will be no agenda. It is not a workshop. There will be no facilitator or planned remarks or any of that. There will be drinks and food and fun people and smart people who care. And we want to gather and just use that as an opportunity to thank you. I think it's frowned upon still to put like bubble bath in the fountain out front, right? That's unfortunate, but we'll work on that. It'll be fun nonetheless.
There's a fee for that.
Okay, then it's possible. See, fee for service model. That's right. So we know that connecting with each other and our ability to connect with you is as important as any of the specific knowledge or tools and resources that we might be able to offer. Those connections are what we will use as the basis of our strength to endure, to prosper, and to move ahead, no matter what the challenges are that we face. So be on the lookout for a more formal invitation that does not include mentions of bubble bath in the fountain at the Duke Mansion. But nevertheless, will be fun and we're looking forward to it. And thank you again. And to those of you online, thank you for sharing your time as well. And we will see you soon. Oh, yeah, we're here. Thank you all.